anxious to spend time with him alone, but he held my hand to calm me down. I asked him, "Why didn't you tell me you were coming?" To which he replied, "I wanted to surprise you." He went quiet a second, and then continued, "I wanted to ask you to be my girlfriend in person, since it's more romantic and all." My heart simply melted. I wrapped my arms around his neck again and hugged him. We got home 10 minutes later. I was super excited to introduce Max to my parents. "Mom, Dad," I said, "this is Max, my boyfriend." My dad and Max shook hands first. Then he shook hands more softly with my mom. "If it's not a problem for you, Mr. and Mrs. Wilkerson, I'd like to take your daughter out on a date today," Max said. I heard my mom stifle back a squeal of excitement, but Dad gave him a disapproving look. Mom elbowed him, after which Dad said, "Yes, no problem, young man." Mom smiled brightly and pulled me upstairs. She must have made me try on a dozen outfits and 5 hairstyles. She finally made me slip on a dress and curled my hair slightly. She put mascara and lip gloss on me. "I just want your first date to be perfect," she said. I managed to escape my mom's clutches and headed back downstairs, but I wanted to hear the awkward conversation between my dad and my boyfriend. As I tiptoed closer, I heard it much less awkward than I expected. "So has your rate gone up, boy?" I heard my dad say, which Max denied. What rate? What was my dad paying Max for? I walked in and they both turned to look at me, Max looking guilty. "What rate?" I asked Max specifically, but my dad jumped in saying, "He's gonna mow the lawn for us while he's here, and I asked him to pluck the dandelions too." Max simply nodded, but I noticed he wouldn't look me in the eyes. My dad could fool anyone with how good he was at lying. Everyone except me. I had a feeling he and Max were hiding something from me, but I let it go for the time being. Max took me to a cute little ice cream parlor where we sat, talking for hours. He was funny and charming, so of course my stomach was all butterflies when he talked. I felt comfortable around him. I didn't feel self-conscious if I snorted between laughs, or if I had some ice cream on my chin. He would just laugh and snort back or wipe the ice cream off my chin. We finished our ice cream pretty quickly, so we stood up and went for seconds. I got lemon, and to my surprise, he got peanut butter. I watched him order his ice cream, and when we sat down, he started eating it. "How's your ice cream?" I asked him. "It's great," he replied with a bright smile. "I should call an ambulance or something, though, shouldn't I? Before you pass out?" I asked him. He looked at me like I had just told a joke he didn't understand. "You know, since you're allergic to peanuts," I explained. His eyes grew wide. "You told me you're very allergic to peanuts, so how come you're eating peanut butter ice cream?" I asked him. I put my cup of ice cream down and crossed my arms. Max seemed to deflate. He looked down in shame, before spilling all his secrets to me. He showed me the conversations on his phone, the transactions and the voicemails. "I was great," he replied with a bright smile. "I should call an ambulance or something, though, shouldn't I? Before you pass out?" I asked him. He looked at me like I had just told a joke he didn't understand. "You know, since you're allergic to peanuts," I explained. His eyes grew wide. "You told me you're very allergic to peanuts, so how come you're eating peanut butter ice cream?" I asked him. I put my cup of ice cream down and crossed my arms. Max seemed to deflate. He looked down in shame, before spilling all his secrets to me. He showed me the conversations on his phone, the transactions and the voicemails. I was shocked and hurt. I closed my eyes to keep tears from streaming down my face, but it was in vain. I shot Max an icy glare. He looked desperate and worried. "But I want to get to know you," he said, reaching for my hand, but I moved it away and stormed off. I slammed the door open when I got home and went straight to my dad's office. "How could you?" I shouted at him. "You're sick! I can't believe you did that to me!" I was offended and I felt invaded. While I thought I was texting a cute boy my age, I was actually texting my own father? His face fell when he registered what I was shouting. "Elle," he began, but I cut him off, saying, "No, you don't get to make excuses. You invaded my privacy. You tricked me and Max. You hired an actor to pose as my boyfriend? What made you think that was okay? It's messed up." My mom then walked into the room because she heard the noise. I told her what he had done, and it was reassuring to see that she was just as shocked and disgusted as I was. Dad frantically tried to explain to my mom and I why he would do such a thing, but nothing he said could make it better. I mean, he paid a boy to use his picture and then pose as my boyfriend? Am I crazy to think that's messed up? I avoided him around the house for months, until the day he left. He kept his promise. We wouldn't move again, but he did. As he drove away from our house, I stood with my mom at the front door of our house. My mom wiped a tear from her cheek and asked me, "Will you ever forgive your father, darling?" To which I replied, "Of course. I know he didn't mean to hurt me." My mom sniffled and walked into the house. I was about to do the same when I heard a familiar voice behind me say, "Elle." I turned around and saw Max standing there with a bouquet of beautiful flowers. We stood there for a second, just looking at each other. I hadn't seen him in months. I had almost forgotten what he looked like, because he was only really in my life for half a day. "Elle, I'm sorry," he said, to which I replied that it wasn't his fault. I meant what I said at that ice cream place. I do want to get to know you. Everything I learned about you is amazing. Please, just give me a chance." He gave me the bouquet of flowers. It was as big as my entire upper body. I looked at him and couldn't help smiling. I asked him, "Want to go for some peanut butter ice cream?" And we walked hand in hand, taking turns carrying the enormous bouquet that I didn't want out of my sight just yet.
When I was a kid, I didn't have many friends. My mom would take me to the playground sometimes, but before I could play with any other kids, their parents would pull them away. I tried to befriend kids in my neighborhood, but their moms always rushed out and told them don't go near that house. I never understood why. Our house looked just like the rest. My mom looked just like the other moms, and I was a normal kid like everyone else. After a while, I stopped trying to make friends. I was pretty young when I got it in my head that there was something wrong with me. Otherwise, why did no kids want to be my friend? When I was in middle school, I was already a complete loner. I ate my lunch alone in a bathroom stall every day. It wasn't as sad as you might think. You hear a lot when hiding in a semi-public place. "Where do you think she goes every day?" I heard someone come in. I heard a few sets of footsteps outside my stall. I heard she hides somewhere. I would too if my mom was a criminal. Another girl said. This piqued my curiosity. Who were they talking about, I wondered. Then a third girl chimed in. Poor Tessa. I bet she doesn't even know. They were talking about me. Why would they say my mom was a criminal? My mom had never done anything bad. The girls left when the bell rang, but I stayed hidden in the stall. I was angry that they were making up such lies about my mom. Part of me wanted to push the stall door open and shout, "What about your mom, Lizzie? We all know her brownies for the bake sale were store-bought," but I would never stoop so low. You know how sometimes a single word is enough to make you overthink all day until you're a messy pile of nerves? Imagine how I felt at that moment. I was angry, I was confused, and I was scared for some reason. The next day, I had computer class, but I stayed behind after the teacher locked the door of the computer lab, so I could go on the internet without anyone looking at my screen. Those girls were talking about my mom, I thought, so maybe I should just Google her name? I always wondered why they never did that in the movies, so I went ahead and did it. What I found shook me to the core. There were dozens of articles about my mom, and that was just the first page of the browser. I thought maybe it was some other woman they were talking about, that my mom just happened to share a name with some woman who kidnapped a bunch of kids years ago. But I was wrong. One article had my mom's picture on it, and really big. I skimmed through the articles. They all said just about the same thing. Years ago, when I was 2 or 3 years old, my mom started a daycare business in the house. The article said that one day, the parents of the kids went to pick them up, but my mom didn't let them in. She started yelling at them, and soon the garage door opened and she sped out onto the street. It said the parents watched in horror as their kids waved from the back of the speeding van. The articles all said my mom did this for different reasons, but the ending was the same for all. She crashed the van and was arrested. The kids were said to have, as their kids waved from the back of the speeding van. The articles all said my mom did this for different reasons, but the ending was the same for all. She crashed the van and was arrested. The kids were said to have returned to their parents safely, and that they were strapped tight in the van with loads of pillows and belts to keep them safe. It said that my mom wasn't sent to jail because she was mentally ill, so she was put in therapy instead. I couldn't believe my eyes. Did they throw her in a psych ward? Did she wear a straitjacket? Did she actually do it? I was done with the internet for the day, so I knocked on the door and shouted until the janitor let me out, and I ran out of school. As I walked home, my mind was flooded with worry. Was my mom a criminal? What happened to those kids? Why would she do such a thing? The worst thought of all then popped up in my mind. What if I was one of those kids? I started seeing pieces of myself in every woman around me. What if that woman in the grocery store is my real mom? What if my gym teacher is my real mom? What if that lady chasing her kids around the park is my real mom? When I got home, I went straight to my room. My mom came after me asking me about my day as always, but I locked the door and told her to leave me alone. She pounded on the door, telling me to open it. She was getting angry. I cried silently on one side of the door as she pounded on it, demanding I come out, then softly begged